Welcome to today's webinar. This will be Chapter 10, the concluding reflections of the book, The Last Commons. We'll be concluding the serialization of the book with this webinar. I've invited the standard panelists of Haley Simons, Jeff Ulich, Dawn Ringrose, and all of the featured guests have been invited to participate in this particular webinar, reflecting on the book itself and specifically Chapter 10. But before I begin and introduce the panelists and begin the discussion, I'm going to ask ARCOS if he'll provide us with a brief summary of Chapter 10. So ARCOS, over to you.
Chapter 10, The Last Commons, argues that sovereignty is not limitless freedom. It's the discipline to act responsibly. It warns that shared spaces for honest disagreement are under threat from platforms and rigid institutions. To protect the commons, we must rebuild trust and enable both personal and collective agency. In short, sovereignty thrives when we defend the discipline of intentional shared space.
Okay, thank you, ARCOS. Now, over to the panel.
I'm glad that set the stage. I'll be here if you need me again. Go lead a great discussion.
Well, here we are. Welcome, everybody. I'm delighted that a number of the special featured guests like Peter and Lorenz and Bill have joined us, and that our standard panel is here, and that the audience of Richard and Trudy and Shirley and others and Michelle have joined us today. So I'm looking forward to this. This is the wrap up, and I have no reservations if at any time, including you, Lorenz, want to challenge me on what's been discussed over the course of the last 10 weeks. But I'm just going to open. I don't have a question that is directed to anyone in particular. I'm just going to throw the question out and see where it lands. So as we conclude this 10-part exploration of sovereignty, institutional fragility, trust, AI, and the future of human agency, this chapter challenged us to examine not merely what's gone wrong around us or what is continuing to go wrong around us, but what may be weakening within us. How is it affecting us individually? The discussion should now shift from a diagnosis to what can we do to increase responsibility? So the question is, the chapter suggests that the greatest threat to sovereignty may not be external at all, but the erosion of discipline, self-governance, the capacity for us as individuals to productive disagreement. Do you agree or not that society has lost that discipline? Do you see any signs that it can be rebuilt? So we're shifting now from this global tsunami of disagreement, even violence, and asking, is the consequence of all that people are just ducking? I mean, someone was saying during the introduction that they were afraid, I think that was extreme, to challenge me. And I laugh because I think I'm just a soft pussycat. But I mean, if people are concerned that they're going to get exposed or that their viewpoints might be wrong or they might be a challenge, we're losing something fundamental to a democracy built from the bottom up. Anybody want to join in on this and challenge it or reinforce it?
Well, I'd like to step up and challenge the use of the word sovereignty here.
Okay.
In the context, when I read the question, it struck me as it's more about agency than sovereignty. Do we mean therefore, what is the definition of sovereignty that we're dealing with? Because I mean, I think of sovereignty as dealing with a nation state. I never think of applying sovereignty to a corporation or to a university, educational institution. I think of it as sovereignty in the nation state. And in this case, we're really talking about the people in the nation state. And therefore, is it about our agency? Are we losing our agency? Are we gaining in their agency? Is our agency changing? That's more at the higher level question I have at the moment.
Well, I mean, the word agency, the word sovereignty was used throughout the book to refer to responsibility. So let's, if even accepting your point, do you think we're losing agency? Do you think people are ducking and reluctant?
Yes, yes.
Do they have places where they can feel comfortable expressing their views?
Well, they certainly can. I mean, we do that in this very forum. But I don't think we're the average citizen in that sense. I think we've all agreed that we're the curious. And I don't think a lot of people are that curious about things.
Well, there used to have town hall meetings. In town hall meetings, people would gather and they'd discuss the sick. Now they relegated it to a council. The council gets politicized or gets bought or gets elected based on extremes of right or left. And where's the citizen? And yet the citizen is being affected all the time. Anyone else want to chime in here on this issue of are citizens, are individuals losing, are teenagers losing confidence that there are places that they can express their views other than on Facebook in a public forum without being criticized or being afraid? Is the citizenry changing as a byproduct of these public conflicts that are going on? Bill, you want to add anything here?
Yeah. Quickly, I don't see sovereignty as national. I see it as individual. If you actually break it down, it has to come down to an individual level. And sovereignty, as you explained quite well, is a level of responsibility. And yeah, absolutely, we're transferring and avoiding responsibility due to our attention-focused society. Is it fixable? Certainly. How do you do it? I don't know. The control of the population through technology, public schooling, etc., is so overwhelming that I find it very challenging to believe that the last commons can survive. And I think this is what the whole book is about for you, is that with the loss of the last commons, society is at serious risk of complete collapse. So are we capable of it? Of course, we are capable of it. But do I have a solution on how to reverse that? It's really hard for me to put that out to the crowd or to the public on how to correct that.
Well, a point was made last week, I think, I can't remember who raised it, that we just need to have more commons. We need to be inspiring people to get together and have discussions. Discussion groups. We talk about institutional fragility. I think about that organ issue, Haley, that you're deeply involved in as an advocate for the retention of that organ. Where could people gather to have an open discussion about the retention or otherwise? They've relegated to institutions, and the institutions are either bought or they're fragile. They're reluctant to be criticized. They don't want to be criticized, and so we get a very flawed debate that the media picks up on as if that's the last word. So where can people have a discussion? Haley, you want to jump in here at all? You're muted. Yep.
Sure, I'll jump in. I don't need an invitation. What a big topic. Two thoughts. Whether we talk about sovereignty as the actual reigning king sovereign or personal agency, let's just talk about personal agency, because that's where I'm going to focus on. Personal agency is always has been the privilege of the secure. So we're sitting here in this webinar. I'm fairly certain that this demographic at this stage, we're pretty secure. When security is threatened, you can threaten security artificially. It can be very real. It can be unaffordable housing. It can be no more pensions. It can be worthlessness of our degree granting institutions. It can be institutions not stewarding properly things that mean the most to the citizens. Oregon is the perfect example. It's not an anomaly. That's the pattern. My question would be, how can anybody fight for sovereignty in an environment like this? And my caution would be, yes, it's wonderful to have commons and a meeting ground, but the diversity is such a big component of that. Otherwise, we have an echo chamber and complaining about kids these days, they don't understand how bad it was for us in the past. But we have a very, very privileged outlook right now. I think we have to be careful when we're talking about claiming sovereignty. It is a battle. And I think the answer, Bill, I don't have an answer either, but an idea would be exactly like Perry's. It's not just having a place, but making that place a regular and agential structure.
Okay, good point. Now others have jumped in. Lorenz, I think you were first. Go ahead.
Yeah. Back to, I really like the way this is spontaneously evolving with the idea of sovereignty to agency, and then what do you do about it? And the thing, and you've pointed to this many times in your whole series, is that in order to have agency, you have to have some sense of free will. And as Isaac Bashevis Singer said, when asked if he believes in free will, he said, of course, do I have a choice? This is really being attacked. And you've focused on this earlier, but I want to bring it back up here. You know, Jim Balsillie, I think, one of the the CEO of BlackBerry, RIM, said to, I think it was a parliamentary committee, he said, you know, if you guys don't do something, it's the end of free will. And so I want to throw that in there with regard to Bill Jones's, I think it's Bill, I'm not sure yet, comment about, well, what do you do about it? Well, that's one place to start. Because if anybody's going to know themselves, they have to be this insidious, unseen, unaware of bombardment and manipulation through social media has to stop.
Well, and you've also seen the defensiveness of institutions like the Law Society when Jordan Peterson expressed his views, but was then criticized as not being compliant with what the profession wanted to be heard as saying. Oh, okay, Trudy, your turn. Trudy, are you there? I know you were.
Yep. Yeah, now I am. I just was having trouble finding the right spot. My phone switched because I got this little guy. Anyhow, I never used to be afraid of speaking out when it was a very important subject, but I'm finding more and more that there's, especially in social media type places, that it's just getting downright mean out there. Like there's no discussion, there's no trying to debate an issue. It gets shut down and with just vulgar language and name calling anymore, which is so unproductive. And that doesn't come from one side, it comes from all over the place. And to Haley's comment about post-secondary institutions, our Lethbridge University had a woman arrested because they put a restraining order for her not to come onto the university because she wanted to discuss residential schools and the myth that 215 bodies were found in Kamloops. And this is where our young people are being educated. So if you're not allowing people that have degrees and masters and doctorates with a differing point of view to come in and discuss these types of issues, I don't see any hope for it in the future of having.
That was Frances Widdowson, who's now, they were setting a program up by CBC targeting her in a documentary that turned out to be exposed recently, that they were looking at people that were being openly critical and somehow wanting to portray them as
liars.
As liars.
Even closer to home, Perry, if I can
go ahead,
follow up with what Trudy is saying. Perry and I attended an organ recital at the university 3 weeks ago. Now it was an organ recital, student organ recital, with a lot of veterans there. And the University of Alberta found it necessary to call in extra security, and there were 3 armed units waiting for us outside the hall.
And we're just seniors and we're weak. Go ahead, Dawn.
Good grief.
Yeah. By the way,
Good grief is right, Trudy.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's yeah. Go ahead, Dawn.
What I was going to say is, I think what's happened over time is our methods of communication have changed, and we were, years and years ago, I mean, we had conversations, we had the telephone, along came TV and radio and the newspaper. But then we got into computers and cell phones and social media. And with this, we're getting bombarded with a lot of information, and it's a call on us to filter out what's relevant, and to decide what is true and who you can trust more and more. And then you toss on top of that some narratives that people are using in order to enrich themselves. Then you've got a population too that's becoming much more heterogeneous, because we were, as a country built on, similar values and people of certain descent. And then all of a sudden it shifted dramatically to, there's much more heterogeneous population. And sometimes there's competing values and interests there too.
Okay,
So
I
I
think
at the end of it, we're bombarded with all sorts of information. And I think and we're busy trying to survive. And that just becomes simply overwhelming for people. And we're developing habits maybe where we speak in shorter sentences, or maybe we're more impatient. And so it just has all evolved that way to quite a frenzied, chaotic point that it's at right now, I think. I think it's really important to unplug from a lot of that.
When it's so noisy, and I'll pick up your point, when it's so noisy, there's so much information, so many people are talking at once, and seeking for eyeballs, that the messages that get sent out in order to get attention become increasingly extreme. And one of the things that I've noticed is the debates have become increasingly ad hominem. Not logical, but attacking the person, attacking their history, attacking their profession, attacking their background, attacking what they said 20 years ago, to distract you from the point that might be being made in the discussion, which should be based presumably on logic and on fact. But what we get into is people needing to be personally defensive, and you lose the point of the argument that was posed in the first place. Okay, I'm going to shift to the next question. Throughout this series, we've explored institutional decline, in the belief that what we have is this loss of trust, the collapse of public trust, the rise of AI systems, the weaponization of attention that I just alluded to. Yet Chapter 10 argues that the future may ultimately depend less on technology itself and more on whether people can still gather, deliberate, and cooperate in good faith. So the challenge, the question becomes, are we becoming more capable of meaningful dialogue or less? Point I think you just raised, Dawn. Maybe this question's already been addressed. And what responsibility do each of us for the growing polarization and fragmentation need to take in the shaping of public life? I look at Trudy, who is there shaping the future with that little boy who isn't yet able to speak. His eyes are wide open. Attention is high. He has no idea what's really going on, but as he gets older and older, he will have the opportunity to respond and reply. And maybe with good parenting, he will be confident and resilient enough to stand up to power, to stand up to institutions, to stand up to professions and say, but I have a viewpoint that may not be aligned by all of you have gathered before. Will he have places where he gets listened to? Will he have a classroom that allows him to say, I don't agree, teacher. I have a different perspective. Anyone want to jump in on that one? Are there places today, classrooms, for example, where children are encouraged to express viewpoints that may not be aligned by the ideology of the teacher, if the teacher tends to be teaching an ideology as opposed to teaching learning? Is there anything in there that we might jump on? I see we've got 1,400 more teachers coming online, by the way. Richard, anything you want to add here? I got you smiling.
I'll just share. I happened to attend a session yesterday evening um, on regional planning. I don't know if you're aware, but the province is supposedly engaging with the public to um, comment on their regional planning process. And so grassroots and at the same time, I just found out that they've basically cut off funding to many of the organizations that um, support better use of water. This is all about water. So the session was called the Ghost Kananaskis Bioregional Planning Assembly. It was in Bragg Creek. I attended. And it occurred to me, if there's one issue that we all, regardless of political stripes, have an interest in, it's water.
Okay.
And so, long story short, the conversation was very to the heart about, how do we feel about how our government is managing our water and the headwaters for the Bow and Elbow in Calgary in particular, and then downstream, of course. It was refreshing because it was exactly what you're talking about, Perry, and everyone else. It was really people coming out of the woodwork and talking about their feelings about water. And you can get emotional about water. I'm sure we can, I mean, again, it's such a central issue. We take it for granted, but could we run out of water? The answer is yes. That's what I learned. Anyway, so I just want to share that it was so refreshing to have this kind of open dialogue and conversation. It was led by younger people. There were several organizations represented. The average age in the room was probably about 40, but it was across the spectrum from 20 somethings to 60 somethings like me. Yeah, it was quite incredible to have that experience. So what I'm really saying is there's hope. I think there's hope, and we just need to do it. I think this is what's coming to mind for me. We just need to do it. We need to self-organize.
There is a role. We need leadership. We need leadership, whether it be in government or the professions, to be agents for open dialogue instead of just advocacy. And what I think you're telling me is that in that example, it was not a foregone conclusion. It was a opportunity for people to express their views. One question was posed, not a lot of ideology, not a lot of advocacy, not a lot of corporations, just an open hearing, and people were engaged. Okay, Jeff, your turn.
Yeah, I was just to pick up on what you were just saying, Perry. I just wanted to ask Richard. It sounds like you were in a session that was facilitated by, you said, younger people,
Yes.
and that they were actually facilitating a dialogue, a conversation with the participants. And I was going to call on Dawn, because you've mentioned this in the past. When you have this sort of performative meeting consultation process where you're up there claiming to be soliciting feedback and input, when you're actually only writing down the things that align with the agenda that you came into the room with, that's the kind of BS kabuki theater that sometimes goes on with these public consultation processes. And I was going to say it's a refreshing example that you shared where you were part of one that was actually authentic and that you felt listened to and that you could express both the technical and also the emotional aspect of your connection to water.
So you're now giving some nuances to the word commons. There's an honest commons and there's a performative commons. And
Yeah.
what we're looking for is the authentic commons where people are encouraged, allowed, and comfortable in expressing their viewpoints. Okay.
I was gonna just add, Perry, that if you're trying to build a good faith deliberation, when identity politics and algorithms are actively rewarding emotional reaction, that's a problem. And if we recognize that retreating to an echo chamber, as some of the others have talked about today, going to your Facebook group where nobody's going to disagree with you, everybody has already a same made up opinion, right? Or a consistent opinion. That's an echo chamber. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a place where you can actually share a view that is contradictory to the views of others. And you can actually talk about that and have it out. And not to say everybody's going to end up agreeing, but there's a place, there's a forum for conversation.
But that calls for the participants to feel comfortable.
Yes.
And that means probably, forming, norming, storming, performing, that they probably need to have gone through some experiences, whether it was in a classroom where they learn open debate and learn the comfort of in a democracy. It's going to be rough and tumble. There's going to be viewpoints that differ. This is what democracy is all about. Accept it. If you want to have pure and simple, a totalitarian can make damn sure that anybody who disagrees is muted. So democracy in itself calls for people to show this level of resilience and comfort, to not be afraid to speak up. So the next question is, in a culture increasingly driven by outrage, by identity politics, by labels, algorithmic reinforcement, and emotional reaction, do you think society is aware of this erosion? We can't fix something if people aren't aware of it. If they are being hypnotized into believing that the new world is one of silence or one of disagreement that they don't want to participate in, are we capable of building a functioning commons? Are we moving toward a future of permanent tribalism and division, just hiding behind the sources of power? And the sources of power accumulate you by showing that they have power and they can shut down other voices. Is that the risk that we run? Is this drift into almost a bifurcated society, not totalitarianism, but two sources of power, and they're the only ones that exist anymore, and you either align or you don't exist? I think that's one of the issues the U.S. is wrestling with right now, is where is the independent? Where are the people with enough courage to say, I will think for myself and I am not going to get labeled? Are we running a risk of having that dilemma in Canada? Not liberal or conservative, but East versus West.
It's not a bifurcation. It's far more complex than that, or multidimensional. It's the social media. Like to Don's point, we used to have the radio, then the newspapers, then TV, and so on. Pamphlets even before the newspapers. But the point is, we've now got so much choice, so many sources of information, quote, information, that people are getting siloed. And so the very point that you were making, Perry, about, your Facebook group is not going to disagree with you. That's the way the world seems to be going. And I would argue that most people have fallen into that. They don't realize they're in that situation because they got all the support they want from the groups that they've fallen into. Like the group, they move to another one.
Can I just say, Peter, to that point quickly, retreating to an echo chamber is a biological response to cognitive exhaustion.
It may be, indeed, yes.
Right.
I can agree with that, or some other form of
it's rational
ignorance in a non-pejorative sense.
Perry, you were exactly right with the fear about it becoming bifurcated. The Senate right now, currently today, as of today, is experiencing a great challenge. Independent senators may not be able to function properly anymore. The independent Senate is at risk of no longer existing. And that is, to me, in a leadership, when you have this bifurcation in a leadership, whether there is nuanced other dimensions in society, sure, we have to navigate through that. But when leadership shows that bipartisan or bifurcation, I think that's a huge sign. And yes, we're experiencing it in Canada right now.
I mean, that's institutional fragility. If our institutions are not prepared to stand up for something that is meaningful and purposeful as it relates to their origins, and simply being manipulated by sources of power, where power becomes everything, not democracy, not the voice of the people, but the party in power wants to keep power at any cost, that's the drift to totalitarianism. A recurring theme across the books suggests that many traditional institutions may no longer be capable of reforming themselves, Senate by way of example, and that meaningful adaptation may instead emerge through flatter networks. This is what we're looking for: flatter networks, citizen-led initiatives, communities, entrepreneurs, municipalities, sovereign individuals operating outside of conventional systems, willing to stand up, provide a form of leadership, bottom up. Does this transition represent liberation and renewal, or does it risk producing anarchy, even greater instability, fragmentation, and loss of public cohesion? If we're asking people to stand up and have, like they did in Brad Creek, a discussion around a topic of relevance to that community, that group, that profession, and we want to hear them, are we producing anarchy? And if trust in institution continues to erode, please speculate about what ultimately replaces that institutional authority. I mean, it's hard for us to imagine a world where the institutions that we've lived with for most of our lives would disappear, and imagine what institution may be the one of the future in order to handle all the knowledge that AI can accumulate about that mankind has accumulated or digitized. Can we even imagine something like the United Nations, or something at a personal level where we have a vote daily?
Can I just,
Can we imagine an environment that is different than the one we have today?
Harry, are you talking about, it sounds to me like you're talking about rules of engagement.
Go ahead, keep going. It sounds like it.
Well, I'm thinking about this example yesterday, this grassroots, basically because there's a concern that the government already has a plan and they're going to railroad us on this, and the plan does not do what it should in terms of protecting our sustainable water sources. So but what I observed was how these groups are self-organizing, and they are self-organizing to voice a legitimate, not concern, but actual good recommendations on how this planning can be done better. So what I'm thinking is that it's about forming and engaging and so on, but it's also about how. How do we do this effectively? And I've heard this in the conversation. Many people have commented on a fracturing in conversation. So at any level that can happen, how do we avoid that?
Well, I'll give you an example how we can avoid it. And this takes us into a very different future. Suppose society decided to ask AI what the right question is, and AI becomes the determinant of the answer, because we as human beings are incapable of resolving conflict among ourselves and look for a source. And someone says AI can do it for you. And then, as Jeff has pointed out to me, those who own the data own the future, because they end up shaping the viewpoints that the public will then either accept because they're fed up with the institutions today and all of the conflict and the messes they've been taking us, and begin to rely on something else like technology. Is that a future? I mean, that's the brave new world run by AI, where Big Brother becomes a chat.
So that's a real good point there, Perry. When institutional trust collapses, trust doesn't collapse, it migrates.
Right.
Migrates toward competence, and migrates to those who keep commitments or coordinate actions. But absolutely, it can also migrate to demagogues and mobs if serious people don't pick up that level of competence, trust, and responsibility. So your question about AI fits within that demagoguery, where if people are looking for competence and they throw it into the machine, you still have to ask who has the authority to exercise what the machine determines. So then you have to look beyond the AI. It's just a tool. Who is wielding the tool? And that's where the authority and trust will be placed. And yes, it can be misplaced because we're focusing on competence. Humans don't organize well within chaos. Chaos happens, but it gets reorganized. And we've seen it when we talk about revolutions. you have great chaos, and then someone comes up and has the competence to reorganize, not into chaos, but out of chaos. And yes, you can get your dictators, but it doesn't mean you avoid those that have real competence and real social claim to that reorganization. It becomes a choice, and AI is just a choice. If you want to throw that responsibility on it, somebody has the authority to exercise what AI says. And as Jeff is exactly right, are we pushing it to that elite people who control the data, who now can claim the authority? We own the data, we own the knowledge, and now we own the decision. And that's quite interesting.
Well, I mean, I raise this a bit tongue in cheek, but at the same time, if the degree of conflict reaches a point where people begin to fall by the wayside, does AI emerge as the source of trust? With all the kids that are using Facebook, with all the people that are using social media, they're already being shaped in order to be comfortable having a dialogue within an AI space, within the internet. Are they just one step away from turning to AI as the source of their knowledge, the source of decision making? I mean, I must confess, I'll give an example. I knew nothing about gardening. I simply picked up what my wife wanted to do in the garden. I knew nothing about gardening herself, but as she's passed on, I've taken on the gardening in a big way. I mean, I don't do small projects. I've done a big garden, but I know nothing about lobelia. I know nothing about sweet William. I know nothing about sunflower. And so AI has become my source of guiding me in building my garden. I
Yes.
trust it. I trust it.
Well, but you're responsible for it. AI will never get a thorn in his finger. AI will never get its hands dirty. So yes, you can certainly utilize AI as a tool to guide you into what you're doing, but at the end of the day, you carry all the consequences.
Right. Well, that's the personal sovereignty. That's my protection. Is yes, I will learn from experience, and every now and then I found out that Sweet William wasn't the right answer for soapwort. It requires moisture. Soapwort is dry. I learned a little bit. I had to play around with it, and so I remain in charge. But if others are not that critical thinkers, if others do not have that personal sovereignty, if others don't have that resilience and begin to lean on AI, including government officials, parliamentarians, MLAs, corporate officials using AI as the source of their knowledge to help them with decision making, they have foregone that personal sovereignty in the interest of corporate power.
Yes.
There is a risk.
But
Hey, Dawn, you jump. I'm going to let Dawn jump in. I'll come back to you, Bill. Go ahead, John.
I think this we've got to keep a very close eye on AI. I was just listening to people talk about putting some of these large AI centers in place, and the amount of water and energy they consume, and the amount of land that they have to take, and the jobs that will ultimately be affected. And it really and it's a quest, for building these things so that really a handful of companies can benefit in a lot of ways. Yes, we might benefit to a certain extent, but it's really working on things that benefit a few that really affect negatively the many. And it just struck me as how insane it is in a lot of respects, because the particular area that they were talking about doing this development was in Utah, and you really have to take a look at that part of the world and take a look at what they're already struggling with in terms of water and energy and so forth. I mean, how far do we need to push this to dramatically affect the masses?
Okay,
I
Dawn,
Yeah.
okay, so at every transition, you had
Mhm.
moving churches. Churches consumed enormous amount of labor in those communities in the age of faith, in the belief that faith was the coalescing factor that made a community. And they built that church, and they built churches around the belief in the age of faith. We moved the age of knowledge. We spend a lot of labor and a lot of money and a lot of taxes on on schools, not churches now, schools and universities. That whole knowledge economy was built around an entire architectural infrastructure. So now we're reaching this age of AI, this age of whatever we're moving, and we're building data centers, not schools. We're building data centers as the alternative to the knowledge economy. It doesn't seem to me that different. We're just moving in a new trajectory where data centers become the architectural replica of what that age is going to be all about. And every community is going to want one, and every community is still championing its knowledge, but we've allocated it now to AI. We're all going to play with AI. We'll run our small businesses off AI. We'll build our gardens off AI. We will use AI to make our political decisions. It'll save our water because it has all the knowledge that human beings have accumulated over the last 100 years. It is a brilliant alternative. Brilliant.
Yeah, but you know, I always wonder with the adoption of new technology, what I see an awful lot are organizations, in particular governments, that are really quick to adopt technology, and they end up, you know, not studying it properly in the first place.
Dawn, wait a
They
government.
make the decisions.
Dawn, governments? Do you know trillions of dollars are being spent on building the future?
I know.
This is not incidental. The point that I've stumbled upon, that I'm raising, that the book gets into, this is a fundamental issue. Society is on the verge of being changed. They are building data centers in mass. They are spending, whoever they are, we are, it's their money, it's our money. Trillions of dollars are being spent to rapidly build an infrastructure and to get the energy and to get the water aligned and to build the technology so it doesn't use as much water, it doesn't create a lot of jobs, but we're going to all have one. So we can use AI to run our businesses, to have accumulated wealth, to have a future of abundance. And it's all giving up, but we need to keep our personal sovereignty. But it's giving up all that power to AI. That's the future I see unveiling, and that's what the book talks about, and puts us personally at risk.
There's an
I think
article
so.
in the Globe and Mail, or it was on CBC today, about putting all of these major centers on hold until they understand just what these centers are going to be able to do and not do. So anyway, I don't know, maybe government is waking up to the fact not only of the possibilities of this incredible technology, but also the dangers. And, you know, none of us can really predict what's going to happen next.
It's coming very late. The trillions of dollars are being spent, indicating to me that capital is being deployed in the trillions of dollars, and the race is on between China and the U.S. as to who will dominate, between OpenAI and Anthropic. There is a war going on that most citizens are unaware of, that is shaping the future, and their personal sovereignty is at risk. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the conversation about, you're often talking about the challenges between public and private, public and personal interest. And Peter McKinnon and I have chimed in occasionally in the past to raise our concerns about the third leg of that stool, and that is corporate. And the problem that I have with looking to AI as a solution is that all of the models that we are exposed to are privately owned. I would not, I'll take one example, it's kind of an outlier. Elon Musk's Grok is an AI that has been demonstrated. He puts his finger on the scale of what that AI produces all the time. And so who is running the AI? And Sam Altman has talked about AI at some point in the future being like an intelligence meter, like a utility, that intelligence will be metered and you will be charged on a token by token basis, right? Maybe it needs to get to a stage where it's handled, like intelligence is handled as a utility. But right now, the predominant model is the corporate model. And so the money is so great, the profits are so huge, well, potentially so huge, they're not there yet. But that's what's those institutions, some of the institutions that we've been talking about have already had a degree of corporate capture, and the governments that should have done something to regulate social media, as we were talking about previously, have done nothing on social media. And they've done nothing so far in terms of AI. There's been, as Peter has mentioned before, there's been attempts, and there's things in the works. But in the US, where most of these models are being built, the ones at the leading edge, the frontier models, there's no regulation for all intents and purposes. And so that's a reflection of that corporate capture. And I don't see a way forward for that to remove the influence of those corporations from what at some point may need to become a utility. And I'll just say one last thing. Trump at one time mused about the White House's role now in approving AI models and maybe nationalizing AI. That's a very interesting thing coming from Trump, because he's been reticent to do any kind of regulation so far.
Let me take that one step forward. I saw in the National Post today that the US is beginning to take seriously the need for AI. You don't think that the United States and China couldn't be having a discussion about an alignment around AI? The future of AI is very relevant to China and very relevant to the US. If they end up finding some agreement instead of being competitors, and it's competition that presumably allows us to make sure that good things evolve. If there isn't going to be a competition on AI because the two decide to cooperate, fearing the other may win,
I know Peter has his hand up, but I was just going to say, if they are talking about that, because they're together in Beijing right now,
right.
If they are, Trump is not negotiating from a position of strength, because the Chinese open source models, Kimi, which just came out, is unbelievable, and DeepSeek version 4 is 10 times less compute costs than OpenAI's.
Like, did you see who Trump took with him?
Of course.
Took Elon with him. Okay, go ahead, Peter. This is
I was going to amplify some of the things that were just said. But first off, this whole issue of data centers, to start with, most of the 7,000 plus data centers in the world, which are almost all corporate, are in the wrong place geographically. The net result is they're in deserts, they're in dry places, if not deserts, where there's not sufficient water even for the local communities. And the net result is that these corporate decisions, even the ones that fight against communities, are putting an awful lot of load onto the community itself in terms of ultimately tax base. So the communities are going to be forced to pay increased taxes to create the infrastructure so they have data centers. I mean, this is, in some respect, my view, criminal.
If the data centers are in fact the source of knowledge, and we continue to believe that knowledge is fundamental for effective decision making, people may want their data centers ultimately and accept the fact that there's a tax to have that in their community. But those data centers just don't serve that community. Those data centers serve the globe.
That's right.
Okay, the final page.
Also, what Jeff, I'm not sure who's the other Jeff. So Jeff, what he was just saying about the Trump administration, this is a dramatic shift. The administration has gone in the past, actually with an executive order, is now suggesting that there's now going to be a joint panel of government and private sector people to discuss something about how to do some regulation of AI. And I might point out that many of the leaders of the big AI companies in the United States have for a number of years been asking to be regulated.
Okay, you heard it first here. I think you're going to see one of the major announcements coming out of that visit to China about an AI alignment.
I agree.
It's a threat, but it's
actually today, when it was said, I read it today, and it might have been in certainly the last 24 hours. It says that we are friends. We should be collaborating together. This is what she was saying to Trump.
Okay, Lorenz.
Just quickly, because I know you want to go. Google, I think, is going to announce very shortly, if they haven't, that they're going to give everybody Gemma for free. So everybody can download it. That's one thing about where this is going. So you can't really tell between all these competitors.
Yeah.
And the second thing is about the data centers. Some of the leading AI people think this is just all wrong, because everything we're talking about is assuming that what is happening today is what's happening, whereas it's not necessarily. And when AGI comes, that we've talked about before, should it come in the next decade or whatever, that changes everything. That changes our whole conversation.
Right.
Stop there.
That's almost a good point to wrap up, Lorenz. I know we've gotten excited in the last few minutes about what might be an insight that you can look at this as a threat or look at this as a global opportunity. The global opportunity may emerge, and then there's an alignment among corporations, there's alignment by government, and we begin to see AI evolving in the interests of society. Is our personal sovereignty at risk? Do we need to teach our children the importance of being resilient, the importance of critical thinking? So my last question, what qualities, capabilities, or disciplines do you believe young people need to preserve both their personal sovereignty and contribute to a functioning society in the years ahead? How do we take that little child sitting with Trudy Nigley over the course of the next couple of years and ensure that that individual grows up to be strong enough to make decisions, maybe using AI, but to be to engage in critical thinking? It needs to have values that have been instituted in that child at a very young age, that it carries forward, that it feels comfortable enough to make decisions on its own and to speak up. Haley, did you raise your children that way? Dawn, did you raise? Randall, did you raise? Are your children, Michelle? Do you feel confident that our techniques and our way of parenting and the institutions that you sent to are preparing our children for the future in the same way, or do we need to do things differently? Michelle?
I think I said this the last episode, which is it comes down to, for me, personal sovereignty. It starts at the family level. What we as parents equip our children with in terms of not just everyday language, but talking to them about critical thinking, about how you make decisions, how the the thinking processes flow. And this again is alluding to the Kettner-Trago model. And from there, teaching them values. What's a value? What is the underlying value that we want to go forward with? For me, it's do unto others as you do unto yourself. It's trust, it's integrity, having that respect for people. Those are core to me. So how do we instill those in our children? And from there, when we talk to teachers, we engage instructors, we put them in programs. How do we make sure that they are also abiding by what we feel are the things that are going to lead our children to think logically, to process things? And I want to add one thing, which is I had a decision to make at one point about sending my children to a private, very expensive school versus one a public school, which the decision came to when I went to the private school. They're telling me the children had to write out longhand their notes that were put down on the blackboard, exactly as the teacher scripted it on the blackboard or the whiteboard. And the other school, they had mind maps everywhere on the walls. And I looked at that, I said, okay, mind maps, that's it. Because the mind maps are the way we think by point, and it goes out from the central core. And so that's the thing, is how are we equipping our children? And then from there, the organizations we engage with. And what is it that we're learning or have learned that we are then sharing with the people around us, with our, not just the children, but the teachers, as to why you are doing certain things, if you have that thought process already where you figured it out and you want to make, if I put it cliche, it sounds, to make the world a better place.
So the core value expressed in the current, the kernel expressed in the last sovereigns is the power and the relevance of bringing people together without judgment. Often we teach advocacy. We teach children how to go out and argue for about climate change, about data centers. Where are the leaders that bring people together without judgment to say, I am not an advocate, I simply want to bring you together so we can have a healthy discussion? That's the leadership that the sovereigns would be arguing is relevant for the future, is people who are conveners, who believe in the value of getting together and having a healthy discussion without judgment. So often the leaders today are aligned with a political position or a corporate sale. We don't have that neutrality that we need to have a healthy and open discussion. Go ahead, Jeff, you're on.
So asking about how to raise children, the approach that we've taken in our family is try to introduce the children to as many things as possible. We've had them enrolled in boys and girls clubs, and we've been involved in leading those clubs to some extent. Community programs, travel, nature walks, things like that. Basically try to get them exposed to as much as possible so that they have a good idea of what's out there, and then let them make some decisions on their own. As far as schooling goes, I think social studies, different political systems and how our country works, as well as hands-on shop skills or whatever options the children choose to take. And in addition to the developing the maths and sciences, are all important for children to be able to develop a broad spectrum of skills so that they understand the world better, I think.
Did they learn about geography? Did they learn history?
In our house, we have a map in just about every room.
I asked because that's one of the first things they took out of the classroom. Okay, go ahead, Richard. I think you were next, then Bill.
It just so happens I've been going to a lot of sessions. I attended a session put on by the Calgary Institute for the Humanities titled AI and the Future of the Humanities on Friday. It was at the Confluence Historic Site in Calgary. It was an all-day event. It was mostly academics, but not strictly humanities. And to Michelle's point, I think the overriding conclusion, there were 4 panelists from universities in Canada and the US, and a lot of engagement. The overriding conclusion seemed to be, to Michelle's point, we need to find better ways to promote critical thinking, to engage young people in critical thinking. And I'll just throw this out. One of the speakers, one of the panelists, was indicating that there's a new Luddite movement. We know what Luddites are, right?
Yeah.
Apparently this is becoming a thing now. And so to Jeff's point, and we've talked about this a lot, get your youth, and get ourselves for that matter, away from our devices, from our screens, whatever that takes. Sort of become Luddites, I guess. It sounds funny, but yeah.
Well, it's there. By the way, Richard, you're in Calgary, right? Are we
Yes,
going to see
I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. And Jeff, are you interested in being picked up on our way through Calgary or through Red Deer?
Absolutely, yes, please.
Okay, Jeff, hear that. That'll be a fourth. We'll keep that last seat for you. Okay, Bill, and then Aslam.
So the challenge I have is, and using Mr. Kramer's anecdotal evidence, is it's great for us all here who at one point and have good critical thinking skills to be able to teach your children. But that's not the real question. What about the parents who in society today have no critical thinking themselves? How are you going to convince those that their children should have critical thinking when they themselves do not? And that I find is the serious issue. Hence the move to Facebook and social media is the abandonment of the parent in managing their own children's education and social interactions. It has been an abdication. So even if you say, well, 50% actually want their children to have critical thinking, you're dealing with another 50% of the population that doesn't even know what the term means. And I think that's the real issue is a small minority will understand the tool of AI, will understand critical thinking, and will work themselves through society well. But that's the real threat, is we are creating a technocracy of those who know how to use the tool and the vast majority that will not. And it will be either a really brilliant future or a real bleak one.
Well, it takes me back to the distinction between socialism and democracy is those in the know were the socialists. They were the elite. They were the ones that were going to make decisions because they were the wise people. AI may take us into that future, and that's the future that we, as critical thinkers, may distrust. As AI may emerge as the primary instrument of those that are making decisions as elites, which looks like totalitarianism or socialism. The elite are in charge. Those that are in the know, ignoring the needs of the individual.
And that's a serious problem, Perry.
Well, that is the problem.
Case where a group of people using a particular tool will make decisions, but the cost of those decisions and the responsibility of the decisions will be placed on other people. That is really a serious issue.
Well, and therein lies what I think.
But I pay the cost.
But therein lies what KEI is all about. What this commons has been all about is the potential conflict today, but it may be getting even greater, and that AI may be amplifying the distance between decision making by AI and our personal sovereignty. That's what the book is ultimately all about. There's an opportunity, but there's also an enormous threat. Peter?
I just wanted to say, if we look at the sweep of history, certainly recorded history, we've had doomsters always, and we've had the utopianists always, and neither has the doom come or has a utopia come. So invariably over time, we've found to find a way in between those two extremes. We're getting both of these now. The AI, people who are saying this is going to save the world, and the doomsters say it's going to destroy the world. I just see this as just a pattern in our natural evolution of ideas over time. And depending on who has more on one side than the other, that's the one that seems to sway. It's like an Overton window that opens and closes or shifts left and right.
Well, I think the Overton window has been cited frequently as there may be no fear of a single answer here. We may be caught up in this debate for 100 years. This tension between the world that AI is making possible and the implications for democracy and people, we may not resolve this. This may be a topic of discussion and the very foundation of what is the future of democracy, is this debate between AI as a totalitarian utopian force, and that what we wish to preserve is our sometimes conflicting, sometimes clumsy, sometimes right, sometimes wrong uncertainty of democracy, of the one vote, one person still having all the power.
We also need to remember democracy is probably the youngest form of governance that we've invented as humans.
Aslam's got his hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much. In terms of agency or sovereignty, especially from a personal perspective point of view, an individual perspective point of view, I found that being connected to nature, takes you a long way, right? Ever since my kids were young, they're in their 30s now, we've been camping from age 6 months, and they're quite involved, like in backpacking and West Coast Trail and so forth. The appreciation they have for nature and water and so forth has created an empathy within them. I find that they can relate to individuals better. And then the second thing is that I encourage them to travel quite a bit. So they've been to, most part of the world, backpacking or whatever. Having integrated with different cultures and seeing the different aspects of it, a quick point, the honesty in Japan among people. It's really ingrained in them. You find a wallet on the street, you hand it to the police, doesn't matter how much there is to it, right? My son left his computer, his wallet, everything on a train at night. The next morning, he went to the train station, they returned it to him. That built a lot of confidence in them and learning of how they conduct their life. I'll just stop there.
Well, I would I'd like to encourage everyone to hear that last 30 seconds of your pitch, Aslam. My pitch was the power and the relevance of hitchhiking,
Yeah.
of the value that you can place in human beings is extraordinary. Human beings basically help one another. Also, take a walk in the woods, grow a plant, have a garden. Simple things, but the Renaissance man, which has been spoken, which Jeff Kramer talked about, raising children with breadth, giving them a broad array, giving a full menu of experiences before they go out into the real world. Well, in wrap up, the book makes reference to hardening off, to giving people an array of experiences like Jeff does in the raising of his children. And Michelle and I think Trudy said the same thing, is in a way, there's something to be said about existentialism, about the resilience gathered by having an array of experiences in youth, where you have some cover and some protection within the family. But we've got to prepare our kids, and we've got to prepare for a future of an element of uncertainty. AI is not going to go away. It has got trillions of dollars behind it. The new architectural infrastructure of data centers is coming, like it or not. Governments are wrestling. Corporations are spending trillions. This is not going to go away. So while our series is finished, I think this discussion will continue. And I look forward to all of you participating in this. Yeah, well, reading the book and continuing to, in your own families and in your own networks, carrying this conversation on. This to me is what the Last Commons is all about, a healthy debate about what is going on in the future without judgment. So I thank all of you.